This is a story I heard from my friend Y. Y's granddad died about 2 years ago. I loved his granddad almost too much, and at the funeral he cried like a baby, not caring that other people were watching. It happened on the seventh day after his granddad's death. On that day, there was a storm warning for the area where Y lived, and in spite of the murderous wind, Y didn't have enough money on him to take a bus and had to walk home from school. He struggled all the way to keep himself from getting blown away, and it was already past 7 in the evening when he finally arrived home. He took out the key from the bag and opened the door. As soon as he was inside, he saw the door to his own room, which was visible from the front door, open as if to welcome him. He could see from the opening that the light in the TV had been switched on, as well as the halogen heater, which was the sole source of heat in his room. It must be Mom. She was considerate enough to have my room warmed up before I got home. Y thought happily, and he called out to her in a voice more cheerful than usual. But strangely, no one answered Y. He looked around the front door and noticed there was only one pair of shoes that belonged to Y. And neither his mom's or dad's were there. Then Y remembered everyone in the family apart from Y was going to be home late due to them attending a memorial service that was being held for his granddad. Who could be home then? Y was afraid that it might be a burglar. Y tiptoed to his room and fearfully peeked inside through the door. In the room, there sat Y's dead granddad with his back to the door. The moment Y realized that it was his granddad, his fear vanished into thin air. Y was the sort who could never watch horror movies without having someone beside him, but although he knew he was seeing a ghost, it was different when the ghost was his granddad's. Tears rushed to his eyes out of love and gratitude that his granddad cared enough about him to visit him even after death. Granddad gave a few of his characteristic coughs and clumsily scratched at the back of his head. "Granddad!" When Y called, Granddad slowly stood up and turned around. And as he turned, as if by a trick, the outline of his body became slightly blurred. Granddad's face looked as if covered in red ink. Oh, Y. Is it Y? Granddad called in Y's name. The voice was as he remembered it, but the intonation was somewhat strange. It was too monotonous. Granddad used to speak with a strong accent, but his voice sounded artificial as if it had been computer generated. Granddad took one feeble step towards Y. "What happened to you, Granddad?" Y said, growing anxious because Granddad was acting strange. Granddad again coughed a few times and scratched his head. "Granddad, did you try to come home?" When Y asked, Granddad looked up at the ceiling as if he was trying to think a little and said, Oh, Y. Is it Y?" Uttering exactly the same phrase and in the same intonation as before. Y found that disturbing and began to think maybe what he was seeing in front of him was not his granddad at all. Granddad was still staring at the ceiling. From his fingers, some purplish red liquid trickled to the floor, making a small pool on the carpet. Moreover, when Y looked at him more closely, he noticed that Granddad's arm was bent at an unnatural angle, and the length between the shoulder and the elbow was longer than a normal person's upper arm should be. Granddad wasn't like that at all when he was alive. Maybe this thing was something that was pretending to be his granddad. Y slowly started to back away, being careful not to make any noises. But despite his effort, the thing that was pretending to be his granddad seemed to have realized Y's intention and, stretching only its neck, it stared at Y. "Oh no, it's looking at me." The moment Y thought that, the thing's face appeared right in front of him. Its body was still standing where it was. The only parts that moved were its head and neck. The neck was now like an overstretched rubber band. Before his eyes, purplish red bubbles formed around its mouth. Ooh, Y. Is it Y? Y screamed. He ran for his life and took refuge in the nearest bookshop. He was scared to be alone in the house. He couldn't go back until the rest of the family was home, by which time it was past 9 p.m. He told them what happened to him, but no one took him serious. That night, he was forced to sleep in his own room where the red granddad had appeared. Why felt uneasy. Whenever he closed his eyes, he feared that he would see that red face the moment he opened his eyes again. But in the end, fatigue took the better of him and he fell asleep. When he woke up the next morning, his face somehow felt itchy. He went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. His face was wet with purplish red juice. From then on, he stopped sleeping in his room, because he wasn't sure if he could manage to escape like the last time if the thing appeared to him again. To this day, Y still says that was definitely not my granddad. This is not so scary, but it's happening for real and I want to post it here. About a month ago, when I turned on the TV, suddenly, in the middle of the screen and against a black background, a woman appeared. Looking limp and wearing green clothes from top to bottom. I couldn't tell exactly, but it was something like a green long-sleeve top and green trousers. The woman appeared only for a second, and then it turned back to the normal TV screen. But when I turned on the TV, the woman would appear 3 out of 10 times. What is this? I thought, and called the electrician up to have it checked. But when he came, somehow the woman wouldn't appear at all, no matter how many times we tried, and the electrician got annoyed and left. It seems she only appears when I am alone. As you can expect, I was scared, so I tried things like keeping my eyes shut when turning on the TV and opening them after a few seconds, or going out of the room as soon as I turn on the TV, go to the toilet, and come back and then look at the screen. But somehow the woman would still be there. And about 1 second later, as if she had just made sure I saw her, she would disappear and it would return to the normal TV screen. From 1 month ago until now, the probability of the woman appearing has been getting higher and higher, and now she appears 9 out of 10 times. Now I hardly watch TV at night. I would appreciate if someone could suggest a scientific explanation for this. One high school had an old gymnasium where sometimes, past 6 in the evening, a single beckoning hand was seen to appear from its window. One student saw this hand and innocently walked into the gymnasium. From the next day, the student went missing, and there were 2 hands beckoning from the gymnasium window. That day I had to work until late and ended up catching the last train home. On arriving at my local station, I immediately started walking home when I saw a few people gathering in one corner of the square in front of the station. Curious, I took a closer look to see what was going on, and found there a desk with a paper hanging from it which said "Fortune Telling," and a chair on which an old woman sat. Both the desk and the chair looked like the type usually seen in school classrooms. I had never expected to see a fortune teller at such a lonely country station like this, and was still more surprised to see some customers there. I went closer. Those standing around the desk included 1 businessman and 2 students. On the desk stood 1 candle. The person who was being seen by the fortune teller was an attractive woman in her 40s. I tried talking to the people standing about. Me, is she a good fortune teller? I use the station every day, but I've never seen her before. Businessman. Students. None of them replied. The students wore the uniform of S High, a local school which I was familiar with. What's wrong with them? So mean. I got a bit cross, but decided to wait for a while. I waited for about 15 minutes, but still the first woman hadn't finished her turn. She sure is taking a long time. What are they doing? I wondered. There was nothing there to prevent me from eavesdropping, so I listened. Woman. Is that inevitable? Fortune teller. Yes. That is the fate. Woman. Is that inevitable? Fortune teller. Yes. That is the fate. They kept on repeating the same words in whispers. Something was wrong with them, I thought. creepy. I decided to go home and turned around, but the businessman and students had been standing around me only a second before had disappeared. Before I had time to be surprised, the lights from the station switched off and it got all dark around me. I turned to the fortune teller and the woman again, and was further confused when I found they too had disappeared, along with the chair and the desk. I ran back home, wanting to get as far away from the place as possible. Some days had passed before I read an article on the local newspaper that a family with 2 children died in a car crash on a railroad crossing near the same station. It was a small article and there were only their names and hints about where they lived, but the children were students of S High School. While on a mountain rumored to be haunted, I caught a glimpse of something shaped like a human body floating in the bushes. A ghost? I thought, and fearfully went closer to it to make certain of what I was seeing. It turned out to be not a ghost, but a body of a man who had hung himself. I felt sorry for the unfortunate man, though I couldn't just leave him as he was, and I could at least take his body off the rope. It was then I heard something drop with a thud. I was startled, but it seemed his shoe just fell off. I thought anyway I had to do this, and tried to reach for the rope, but it was difficult. I then went round to the front of his body to work the knot. I tried to undo it again and again, but without success. A while later, I heard something drop with a thud again. I thought that was strange and looked down, but there was nothing on the ground, and when I looked at the body, it was still wearing shoes. That creeped me out, and I decided to leave it and started walking away. But then I realized something. I got round to the front of the body so many times, but I couldn't remember the man's face at all, and I always saw only his back.
Sinister V's, sinister voices. Yo. Action-packed, Black Mac 10, Jr. and his friend, not a pot to piss and starving brothers on a mission. 2:30, brilliant plan to route a toll booth, GW Bridge, got the weapon concealed, nothing to lose. They choose to break the rules at all costs, stick them in Jersey, hit the other side to New York, black and red leather suits and black biker boots. One got the gun, the other one controls the motorbike, adrenaline pumping, dreams of cash. Anybody try to stop them getting lead in their face, believe that. Black Pack.